All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Brian. I work here in the Disability Resource Center. I also teach as an adjunct for the first year experience, and I'm a teacher for the first year experience, and I adjunct for the School of Education in special education. And if you've come here for a class, make sure you sign in the sign-in sheet in the back of the room and label what class it's for, so I can get it to your instructor so you get credit for it. And if you need a Think Achieve card, Emily's got them back in the back of the room, so make sure you get that so you get credit for Think Achieve. Just a little history about my history with our guest speaker. Mr. James Cartee was a student here in 2006 when I joined the Disability Resource Center. So I only got to know him as a student for about 3 months. However, because we made such an interesting connection, I've been following him and been really good friends with him for the last almost 10 years. I was very honored to write a letter or kind of an acknowledgement for one of his books that he had published. That was kind of a nice honor to be asked to do something like that. Mr. Cartee has published some photography and poems books. He's got 4 of these in press?
3 pressed and a 4th just poetry book will be out next year.
Okay. And then recently just published the book that he's here to talk about tonight called One Flight Short of a Cuckoo's Nest. And it's how anyone with a mental illness can survive, resurrect, and inspire. It's a very good read if you want to get some interest into one person's journey through life with mental illness and mental health issues. I'm very proud that he's able to come up and talk about his experiences in his life. But first I want to introduce his mother, Diana Cartee, who's going to give a little bit more information about her son and her experience as a mother dealing with such a stubborn personality.
So I'm really happy to be here this evening. This is my alma mater. I graduated in 1982, which makes me the oldest person in the room. But I'm here to introduce James, my son, whom I'm very proud of. And as he goes through his journey since he's been diagnosed as bipolar, I hope that you will gain some insight into what it's like to live with a mental illness and what it's like to decide and make certain decisions that help you to handle that. James has a lot of inner strength that prevents him from taking drugs or drinking to solve pain, and he relies on that strength to persevere. So that makes me very proud of him. We also, at our home, we do not hide illness. We bring it to light, and we believe that it helps others to cope with any type of illness. Because my husband has high blood pressure, so if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, he's probably going to have a heart attack. So we consider any disability or illness something that you need to bring into the light and talk about to help and inspire others. So as he goes through his journey, I hope that you will become compassionate to others and develop an understanding about what it's like to have some different challenges. And he has had more good times than bad. And he's experienced some wonderful people, a lot of them like Brian, he met here. And people have reached out to him and loved him. And that is really important because there are a lot of people with mental illness who do not have anyone to help them. So there's a good friend right there, I've known since he was in high school. So it's the people around you that make a difference in the places that you go. And my experience here was awesome. I had James 3 weeks after I graduated, and there were a lot of wonderful people who helped me to reach that goal. And that goal helped me to reach a career goal, which I'm hoping to retire in June. And so it is really important that people understand and try to help someone when they come across them. So, James?
Okay, so while that mic's on the chair, but you're going to notice real quick I'm a loud, sometimes obnoxious person. I don't need the microphone, and quite frankly, it was interrupting Brian. It was kind of annoying anyway. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. Jason, hear me okay? Okay. So there is one special person I'd like to introduce you to first. Lisa, please stand up. I was just married on Saturday. We were eloped. And Lisa's my wife. And you can sit down there, baby. Okay. Lisa is another example of achievement for people with mental illnesses, or any relationship really, because a lot of times you're like, well, I can't meet the nice guy, or I can't meet the right girl, and online dating didn't work for me, and so, it's just not going to work out. But that's just a bunch of loaded, something I can't say. So anyway, realize that like your disability in some ways, because I think a lot of you are here, hopefully not just for extra credit, but because you struggle with the same things. And it shouldn't inhibit or limit what you can do, but rather drive you to reach for higher heights. Because things take us longer. We have to work harder. And Tim Tebow says that true hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And I believe that. I firmly believe that the will to succeed is more powerful than those who just naturally get it and come up with it. It's just like they kind of take it for granted versus those who work hard don't take things so for granted. So a little bit more about me. I did graduate from UTC with business marketing and political science degrees in 2006. I've had a formidable relationship with Dr. Klusner and Dr. Rigler, who are influential individuals that are in the Disability Resource Center. And thankfully, there are reasons that I've come back. This will be my second time speaking. Since then, with the 4 traditionally published poetry and photography books, and then the memoir, I got a master's at Auburn University. I even had family members who are now the most supportive family members, which is how ironic, say, you can't get a master's degree, you can't do that, you're disabled, or you're a special needs student. And then when I went to Auburn to work on my master's, not only did I get a scholarship because of how well I did on the GRE and at UTC with a salary, I, in addition to that, finished with a 4.0, and I was the only student to do so in my graduating class. So I take a lot of pride in that. Some professors kind of bumped me up when I was on the borderline, but I still took advantage of that. Can y'all hear me in the back? Okay. There's a guy by the name of Eric Thomas who is known as E.T. the Hip Hop Preacher. He has a YouTube segment where he literally yells, "Thank God it's Monday!" And that's how I try to live my life. Even Brian and I were talking before this whole scenario, and it was kind of like we were talking about how hard Mondays are and how much we don't like Mondays, or how we live for the weekend and Friday. We say, thank God it's Friday. But I love E.T., that's his name, or nickname. I love how he lives for the moment because he says, I get to start over Monday. That's my favorite day of the week is Monday, because I'm going to live for each day. I'm not just going to live for the weekend when I get, to go to the football game, which we like to do now that UTC is actually good. And then I came to homecoming with Brian, and it was just a pleasure to come back because they're actually, playoff and I think even this year national championship contenders, which is exciting because it brings, recognition to our university. So that's just a little bit of me. I've worked at the Alabama School for the Deaf. I've traveled around the world. I've published these books at this point. I've been accepted to start my doctorate in January. I don't say these things to brag, but simply to show that bipolar disorder has pushed me forward to do these things because, let's be honest, if you have mental illness or if you've got some type of disability, everybody knows that we're just more intelligent, creative, and smarter than everybody else because we struggle more. Really, I mean, statistically, there are studies that would suggest that we are dreamers, and therefore we're able to accomplish sometimes more than the average person because, again, we have to work a little bit harder at it. While I don't mind talking about my mental illness because I am an outgoing, outspoken, blunt personality, but it's also not easy for me. You're going to notice when I read excerpts in my book, there are moments with my family where I tear up a little bit because we were each other's best pillars of support, but at the same time we're each other's enemies at the throat when I was manic. And I'll explain to you what mania is in a minute. But It's really, you've got to have the support, but at the same time, your adversaries for the ignorant family members and friends tend to be your worst when you're trying to get people that will help you. So a little bit about my struggle with mental illnesses. I struggled with a manic episode in high school in 2000. Then I went through a clinical depressive episode in 2003. I had another manic episode in 2004. And then I had another manic episode in 2010. And then even more recently, in the last probably 2.5 years, I've struggled with depression. I'm going to talk more about these in detail, but some have been more severe than others naturally. And I had a bipolar professor who's kind of mentored me in ways that I co-teach political communications with online through Lamar University that said, you can live through depression, but mania will destroy your life. And I'll explain to you in a minute why that is certainly the case. But if I do cry and I tear up a little bit, even though it's not my wedding day, I do apologize for that in advance. I wanted to go through some boring book knowledge with you, and then we'll have a little more fun with crazy stories. But NAMI is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. I would hope that if you have a mental illness or disability that you've heard of this organization. Literally nami.org is the website. And this is the website that I most quote, that I most cite, because I believe that they're accurate. WebMD and Wikipedia and some of these other organizations, it's kind of generic, but NAMI gets down to the nitty-gritty. And so they describe bipolar disorder as a chronic mental illness that causes dramatic shifts in a person's mood, energy, and ability to think clearly. People with bipolar have high and low moods, known as mania and depression, which differ from the typical ups and downs most people experience. If left untreated, the symptoms usually get worse. However, with a strong lifestyle that includes self-management and a good treatment plan, many people live well with the condition, which is what I'm here to talk to you more about getting through. I think that NAMI also describes mania as during periods of mania, people frequently behave impulsively, make reckless decisions, and take unusual risks. Most of the time, people in manic states are unaware of the negative consequences of their action. You live in a state of euphoria. So, for instance, you might think that you're going to hang out with Jeff Gordon this past weekend over, NASCAR and drink tea on top of a trailer while you're hanging out with the cool rednecks that also think they're going to do the same because they're so intoxicated. And then the day before, you literally think you're going to start as the quarterback at Alabama and beat Texas A&M. And while you're in law school at Alabama and doing these things at the same time. That's what mania is like. And most people, when they experience mania, they think, it just kind of comes abruptly, and people are like, man, they're really crazy. And it's cool because it's like, man, they're crazy and they really believe this stuff. But at the same time, it's dangerous because none of us could do that in one weekend. Now, we might be able to be in law school and go to the Alabama game and go to the race on Sunday and attend as a participant, but we're not going to drive in the car with Jeff Gordon. We're not going to be best friends with him and then start as the quarterback of a football team and those kind of things. And there are times in my stories where I thought I was going to play in the NBA. I'm a white guy, guys, that wears cowboy boots, please. And that's why it makes me taller. I'm like, I'm 2 inches taller now, I can dunk, but not really because of my beer belly here. So it's like, give me a break already. But then I also thought that at one point I was going to go to law school and start at Miles College in Birmingham, Alabama as their quarterback. Now, if I had a history of playing football, some of the grad students make it happen. Maybe I could have played for a Division III school and been a grad student. There's nothing unrealistic about that. But because I had never pursued football beyond middle school, and because I had, at that point, never been in grad school, it just was unforeseeable. And there was people really that thought that I could do that. That's how convincing mania is. I mean, you live on the edge and you're like, you think this person's going to hang out with Eminem tonight. I mean, they are that convincing, they believe it so much. But I think that one thing, I'm going to read some excerpts from the book. This book took me 6 years to write. When I was manic, I thought I could do this in 6 days. And to get an agent, to get it traditionally published, There's nothing wrong with self-publishing. In fact, in the future, I'll probably do that with one of my books. But I didn't want this book to be self-published. I wanted to be known as an author. I wanted it to be represented by an agent and get a book proposal and go out there and shop around for a publishing company. And a Christian publisher known as Light Messages took it. So that's where the credibility as an author or writer may come. You can make more money self-publishing, but I'm very proud of this because it really is my life story, and I think if you read it, it will enlighten you and inspire you. And if I'm not offending anybody, there's a lot of spirituality in my talk. If you are spiritual, you can respect that. If you're religious, maybe even more so, because this book is really Christian inspiration. And sometimes the public universities look down on that, but thankfully, I can talk openly about that, and some of the schools I've been to so far are cool with it. So this describes me in high school and mania that's going on in 2000. It says, as class chaplain, I took an oath not to drink alcohol, yet here I sat with a beautiful girl sipping wine. Me, not her. I, Caesar of Over the Mountain High School, tippled champagne as my innocent love sat across from me. Little did I know, Mark Antony poured the glass, orchestrating my demise. Pride does indeed come before the fall. I'll spiral downwards in the same year that I rise. My life at Over the Mountain High, complicated as my manic symptoms surface. I experienced notions of grandeur with sports and read long books within a few minutes. Kind of like Good Will Hunting, if you've ever seen that movie. I had only been back in school a few days that had passed without much sleep. Often felt restless, filled with energy, unable to sit still. Yet I entered my kingdom through squeaky metal doors with gusto. I swaggered through the hallways, a rogue James Dean catapulted into a new millennium. No one really knows why a person metamorphoses into mania other than the supposed mental chemical imbalance. My own psychiatrist, Dr. Kyle Eccles, speculates that my broken arms served as a catalyst that ignited all of this chaos. In this account, I try to explain how euphoria transcends logic when mania emerges. In some instances, it is hard to distinguish between mania and normal behavior. Some people thought I acted passionately, while others thought I was out of my mind. And I'm reading parts of the book because I can give you a brief synopsis and explanation of what these things are, but when something takes you 6 years to write, obviously it's going to sound a lot better read than if I just spontaneously give you the definition off of the NAMI website. So I want to tell you a little bit more about depression since we've talked about mania. Again, I'll get through the education and then we'll have some fun stories about the crazy stuff I did. Depression, this is again from the NAMI website. Depression is more than just feeling sad or going through a rough patch. It is a serious mental health condition that requires understanding, treatment, and a good recovery plan. With early detection, diagnosis, and a treatment plan consisting of medication, psychotherapy, and lifestyle choices, many people get better. But left untreated, depression can be devastating, both for the people who have it and for their families. About 80% of this country will experience clinical depression in their lifetime. That's another statistic, I think, off the Mayo Clinic website. An estimated 16 million American adults, almost 7% of our population, had at least one major depressive episode last year. And so if you're not relating to this talking, you're just here for extra credit, that's cool, because I did a lot of that when I was an undergrad. No offense to me, no offense to you. However, some of the things I will talk about will affect you because you will go through clinical depression. It's just a matter of time. It may be because you're having a chemical imbalance or somebody dies or you lost your puppy, but all of us have been depressed even if it was in a relationship. I don't care who you are. So at some point you may, and I'll say this, if you don't go through it, then you're very lucky, and I would say your attitude is John Maxwell or however, at the same time, you will know somebody that does go through it. And you'll know, perhaps by the time I'm done speaking, how better to support them. So again, it's going to affect your life, even if it's a family member, if it's not you individually. So what I wanted to talk to you about again was another definition that I give in my book of what is depression and how it's experienced. Again, just my words, nothing off the website. And this is the beginning of the 4th chapter called Depression. It says, if you ever wanted to die, I mean really die, then you have a hint of what it feels like to undergo clinical depression. Depression involves suicidal thoughts and tendencies on almost every occasion. Suicidal temptations at regular intervals plagued my first episode of clinical depression. It felt similar to knowing that someone you love will never love you. In fact, that is exactly what the devil wants some to think. Nobody loves or accepts you, therefore, what's the reason for living? Thankfully, I have a loving support system that literally saved me every step of the way. The worst kind of depression occurs when you have no one around to help you pick yourself back up. At that point, suicide tempts the victim at the most preferable option. As I already said, God is with us all, but sometimes the near-death experience reminds us how to view His evident love through difficult physical signs. For me, the visible signs lay in my family. I never quit on life because my family never quit on me. They symbolized my very own personal reminder that God loved me. Depression feels like a bad hangover the day after a fantastic celebration for your 21st birthday. If you haven't been there, maybe one day you should, because then you'll have fun. If you're not having fun in life, you can stop studying, get out of the library, and have some. Okay? Hence disclaimer, I did not say that intentionally to mean what I meant. Okay? Okay, some college students indulge in alcoholic consumption long before they turn 21. Remember the first time you grew sick from too much drinking. You ran to the nearest toilet because your stomach could no longer function, forcing your liquids out in the other direction. You feel so sick that you want to die just to stop the pain. When the toilet might offer slight relief during a hangover, the psychological urge to commit suicide because of depression never goes away. The suffering continues unabated, often without explanation. Whether clinical depression follows logic is an interesting question. Sometimes depression is not logical. It is just what it is. You are down, it sucks, but you eventually come out of it. In the old days, without medication, people used to have depression. And usually 6 to 9 months later, when people didn't understand why they were down because no dramatic event happened in their life, they would come out of it because the chemical imbalance in their brain just fluctuated and balanced it. Today we have drugs that can shorten that span to 6 to 8 weeks, and sometimes even quicker than that. And I want to say, if you're experiencing depression, you've got great counseling services here. The psychologists on staff, hopefully psychiatrists as well, are offered to you. At many universities, even free of charge, up to a certain amount of sessions. If you seek help and need medication, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, some people just think it's cool, and they're like, yeah, man, I'm on Zoloft. Man, what are you on? I'm on Prozac. Cool, cool. You know, like y'all speaking the same language because you got to stay up all night, 5 nights in a row. You know, so it's like, and 33% of college students go through depression. It happens, but it's not something to be ashamed of. And I'd rather take a drug and be over it more quick than be miserable all the time and make my friends miserable too, because we can't have fun because I'm just down all the time and they don't understand. So it's like therapy, whether it's just vocal or it's with medication, it's not a bad thing. Don't feel ashamed about it. I'm speaking in front of you, and at the end of the day, don't quite frankly care what you think. I know what they think. My mom, I know what she thinks. My wife, I know what John Mark thinks. I know what Jason thinks. I know what Dr. Klusner thinks. These are close friends that came to watch me. But anyway, and I'll tell you some stories involving them here later too that you're just going to be like, what? Before I forget, I opened the book with a chapter where I flooded jail, college jail. I get arrested because never heard this girl when I was at Lewisburg University. I won't tell you the real name of the university, obviously, to respect it and fictionally take care of myself legally. But I flooded a jail cell. Literally, because I was so pissed off. You know, I was running after this girl, leaving her text messages and emails and voicemails more so than I ever should have, and got arrested for emotional harassment because I would not let it go. Many people don't, they just don't let stuff go. And that's one of the dangerous things that will ruin your life is you get into legal repercussions because of what happens. Well, you know, I thought, oh man, these police, they're the reason that my love didn't work out. You know, I can't court or approach this girl if I'm being held in jail. How dare they? And so I was sick. I was given like 1 hamburger in 3 days, dehydrated, and I had defecated a lot in the still toilet. And I was like, well, you messed with me, so I'm going to mess with you. I flooded that jail cell because I was mad. Well, it didn't stop at 1. They put me in another cell because they thought it was on accident because there was all this toilet paper and all this defecation. And I did it on purpose. Literally took stuffing from the mattress and stuffed it in that toilet. I was so pissed off after 3 days. And started flooding a second jail. And then the guy is interrogating a student. And he's like, and he looks down, and there's water under his feet, and he's like, it's like, what is going on? He didn't know what was going on because there's just water all over this country jail, and this redneck cop who's interrogating and harassing another student is looking at me like, what's going on? So they put me in a third cell, and at this time, belligerently, they know this is not an accident. And I'm like, well, there you go. They take my shoes away from me, don't give me a Bible, and it's just a headache altogether. I flood the third cell. And at that point, a female officer comes in and she says, if you do that again, I'm going to strip you of your clothes and handcuff you to the bars, and I stopped. What's really interesting about all of this story, and there's more details in the book, that's the opening chapter, it's supposed to be the catch line that obviously convinces somebody to read the book, is that I was transferred to the county jail, and I was behaved. I didn't do anything wrong. And I was there for about a week. And what's interesting is that even though manic, I was logical because I was not pissed off at those cops of the county. I was pissed off at the university cops that kept me from loving on my girl that was never interested in me in the first place. But it just shows that even when you're manic, you can be logical and you can control your behavior. And I remember crying when I got to the county jail because there was a mother there that was like, what is wrong with this kid? He's got a 4.0 at Lewisburg University. I almost said the same real one. And she's like, what is up with this kid? She gave me a donut. I'll never forget that. And this cop was beautiful, too. She had a bun up, and she was kind of like that female Terminator in the third movie. Where you're like, man, she's really cute, but look out, she's going to kill me, and if I don't behave, I'm going to be in trouble. And she said that. She said, if you cause trouble here, you're going to be in trouble. We're not going to put up with that. And when I, after 24 hours and I was just laying around and doing some push-ups in the cell, they just kind of were like, what's he doing here? And that kind of thing, because I had never had a previous record. But anyway, getting back on track, I told you what depression was. I think that animals are good therapy. It can be a plant, it can be a goldfish. But in my story, I had basically gotten a pit bull that I felt sorry for in downtown Greenville that I saw an ad for in this redneck newspaper called the Iowa One in South Carolina. So went to go, it's like $100 for a mutt. That's a great deal. So I go get the puppy without telling my parents. And I paid $100 for this dog because he had clearly been beaten. And at that point in my life, I kind of felt down and felt in a rut. And his name was Solo. They kept calling him Solo, not Han Solo, but like being alone. And I was like, how appropriate, because that's how I felt at that time in my life. Well, anyway, my dad gave the dog away, from what I recollect, to a farmer because it destroyed my apartment. And my dad said, no more of this. We're not going to deal with the dog. And actually, I was borrowing a couch from this guy right here, and that dog tore his couch apart. And I'll never forget the point I had to tell John Martin. I don't have a couch anymore, bro. And he had like inherited it from his grandma or something. And I was like, oh man. And it was like a comfy couch where people spent the night and slept on it. So I felt really bad about that too, But at that point, it was like, my dad was like, I can't deal with these dogs anymore. I actually got another dog too, part of another manic side story subplot. But I was like, well, you know what? I'll just get a smaller dog. At this point, I was home and I was being medically treated. And I'll just bring home a smaller dog. If I bring home a smaller dog, he's not going to destroy everything in the house. And I was like, you know what? If you know anything about dogs, and Lisa, my wife, is a dog groomer, I was like, Boston Terriers don't shed. I read that on the internet. What a most reliable source, whatever. They shed like crazy. It's not dander, but it's like you can keep the house clean, but they've got, is it hair? Fur, and it sheds everywhere, even if you use the fur manure. So anyway, my mom was manically keeping the house clean while I was being a manic mess. But basically, I'm going to read a little bit from the excerpt about how this dog named King came into our life, because there's a breaking point in the story where my dad and I actually kind of get into it. So it says, my parents never commented how cute the dog looked that night when I brought him home as a surprise. When I got home, my parents were furious, my father more so than my mother. I never before saw my father so upset. When my father, if I lose it, I apologize. When my father and I shouted at each other in anger, I suddenly burst into tears. For the first time, my father realized how much he disappointed me in the past several months. In addition to solo, I felt like my dad cooperated with my arrest, just going with the flow. As the father should, I wanted Dad to make a stand for injustice, for example, a lawsuit. Dad tried to hug me while in tears, but I wanted nothing to do with him that night. After I disregarded my father's attempts to pacify my emotions, my father walked into the kitchen by himself. I never before saw my dad cry as much as he did that night. My mom swore she would not give the puppy away, and I finally owned a new companion who was here to stay. And then I'm going on to another excerpt, but it says, his name was King David, after the character of the Bible. But it said, even though King abruptly entered our lives, King served a purpose. Through him, my father and mother and I supported one another, and from the point that he entered our lives, he became a distraction from circumstances that seemed to plague my family. My father and I finally got along, despite the mistakes each of us had made. We loved and forgave each other, and the blessings from their love and forgiveness prospered. For me, King became more than just a dog. It became a symbol of family unity and love. In my life, you see how a dog unexpectedly affected my family and the adversity we confronted together. In a sense, King became the family's beloved second son. And it's funny because that stupid little dog would hide under the couches when he was in trouble because my parents, we couldn't reach under there and get him as a puppy. I'll never forget the time when he first couldn't get under the couch. He was barking at the couch like there was something wrong with it. I was like, hello, you grow as a puppy and you can't get under the couch anymore. And we had hardwood floors, and that dog would run around. He loved to be chased. He would do this when you wanted to, wanted to be chased. He would slam his paws on the floor. If you've ever seen a terrier or a Boston Terrier, you know how much they love to play. And so we would chase him around the circle in our house. We had hardwood floors, and he would push those carpets up against the side of the walls because he couldn't stop. And so he would slide across those hardwood floors, and he would make such a huge mess. And me and Mom were laughing, and then my dad's just going nuts because he's just making a mess. And we had to eventually puppy-proof the house so that he wouldn't chew on any more pillows or toys. But Mom that night said, "I don't care what happens. I'm not giving the puppy away because my son's been through too much. And I don't know why we have to take care of this dumb puppy because it makes him feel better." But my dad was trying to give him away, and we did. And the night I brought him home, I went to sleep, and my mom stayed up with him all night because he was whimpering. I'm like, oh yeah, he's clearly a great caretaker when he's manic. But anyway, that just kind of shows a little bit about how a puppy can impact you. From the jail that I mentioned previously, I actually went to a mental hospital. I want to read a little bit of an excerpt from that. And it says, mental hospitals are not fun. They're not fun. If you've had inpatient services, you've gone through it. I thought the jail was a better place than the inpatient hospital, and that's why I've always kind of pleaded with my parents or my wife now, if I become manic or depressed, to treat me at home, because I think being in an inpatient facility is more of a nightmare than just being in your bed at home. And I say, there's some quotes that are highlighted, but I say a mental hospital can often make a mental illness worse, depression especially. Even with a creative mind, I cannot make the stuff up that I experienced in a mental hospital. This quote, it just, some of the stuff, it's another funny chapter because of the stuff that happened when I was in the mental hospital, but it also expresses the seriousness of what it was like. It says, the mental hospital represented hell on earth. Demons of the night whispered into one's mind as shadows and screams surrounded the upgraded jail cell dorms. The concrete white-walled dorm rooms were shared amongst two persons, which surrounded a general living area and counter office space, operated by a nurse and hospital guards in white scrubs and white shoes. So like you see in the movie, it's really a lot like that. If you've ever seen Patch Adams, I think that's a good depiction of what a mental hospital is like. Darkness, depression, and often attempts at suicide circled the damp, barely lit building. An insane white woman with an ugly Dolly Parton-like hairdo who thought she dated Jesus stayed at the ward. For whatever reason, she thought I looked like Jesus and always pointed me out in therapy sessions or chased me around our section of the facility. One time she even took off her clothes and she ran after me through the commons area. Two large, ex-offensive football white men tackled her and stuck a tranquilizer shot right in her butt. The big muscle men in the white scrubs placed her in the white rubber room with the straitjacket for 24 hours. A short, blonde female in her mid-30s named Jackie developed a passionate crush on me, even though some might perceive her as a cougar because of the evident age difference. Despite that, I became quite fond of her. Jackie probably weighed about 95 pounds with smooth skin, blush red cheeks, and deep hazel green eyes. She had a caring personality with her own unique beauty. Like all of us, Jackie possessed her own mental struggles with severe lows. Jackie served as my second mother, protecting me as her own son. I tried my very best to believe because I wanted to behave because I wanted out of the hospital as soon as possible. If you created trouble like the Jesus woman, you stayed stuck in my mental hospital for a while. So what I tried to do was remain calm and non-manic so that I could get out of the hospital. And my mother, like I said, it was worse than jail. I had fun in the jail with all the gangsters and thugs and asked them, what you in the pen for, bro? And then he would say, what? And there was a guy named the mayor that for whatever reason liked me. And because the mayor, he's this old guy, probably in his mid-70s, said, don't mess with James Cartee. None of the guys tried to beef me up. It was a rough place. I contracted latent TB. Never became active with tuberculosis, but had to take a antibiotic for 6 months just to make sure that I never got tuberculosis. Because it's just infested with germs. So anyway, I wanted to tell you another thing about this. What time is it, Ron?
6:45.
Okay. And I apologize for keeping you here. It's like a long, good sermon. I hope this is good stuff that you guys take home and say, this is actually worth going to. But my grandfather, Lewisburg University, tried to throw me out of school. That's why I liked UTC, because I approached my family one night and I said, I don't really want to go back to Lewisburg because they tried to oust me with a judicial trial. And UTC has an amazing, nationally known, best accommodated campus and all this accolades about their Mosaic program and whatnot. And so I wanted to transfer to a place that was familiar to me, and UTC just seemed to make sense since I was from Chattanooga. And I was a senior in college that wanted to transfer. And so my parents agreed to that. Had to make some financial sacrifices to get it done because I was still out of state and I lost some scholarships and things like that. But I came here and John Mark was a doctoral student, and John Mark was actually my roommate when I went through clinical depression in 2003 at Lewisburg. And so he's here, he lives in Chattanooga now supporting me, but he's seen the intricacies of these diseases and never judged me. Jason Coffey back here was a whoopee cushion one year when I was manic for Halloween, and I was Yoda. And I was going on about the end times or something and how Obama was the Antichrist. Now, whether you believe that or not is your own affiliation, but it was just when you're manic, you're just that off your totem pole. It's just, you come up with ideas that don't even seem logical, and they're not. But I wanted to tell you, my grandfather gave a speech during that trial. In judicial services, the director at the time said she had never seen more people support a student than they did me. Now keep in mind that I was coming back from mania. I was still kind of on energy level. But I knew I had a case there, and that if it tarnished, if it was not a medical withdrawal, it was expulsion or suspension from school, it was going to affect whether I could transfer to another school. Maybe not a secondary school, but a caliber school like UTC would say, well, why were you expelled from Lewisburg University? And so the trial was basically me requesting a medical withdrawal over expulsion or suspension. And so my grandfather, my grandmother, my dad, probably 4 or 5 friends, a couple professors, all came in and gave character witness testimonies and education about bipolar disorder. And so, and I'm going to talk a little bit about UTC, and that'll kind of be the wrap-up. So I'll try to get to the end of this soon. But my grandfather's been one of my strongest advocates. He never understands the disease sometimes, but he tries his best to kind of go along with it and figure out what's really going on there. And he actually, what's funny about him is he said, you should never write that book. And now he's bought more copies than anybody else that he knows. So it's just funny how the biggest advocate, the biggest adversaries sometimes become your biggest advocates. So I'm going to read this, and it says, I will never forget the memorable speech given by my grandfather on my behalf that day. When emotional, my grandfather slams his fist slightly on the table wherever he sits. He spoke for about 30 minutes, and I cannot recollect all his memorable words. He spoke with power and authority. The four on the panel sat there stupefied that someone spoke so plainly without hesitation, thinking about what he says before words come out of his mouth. I guess I now know where I inherited my gift of gab and honest directness towards others. Did you hear that, Betty? She's always like, why you gotta be so mean sometimes? I'm like, oh, my grandfather's dad. It's his fault. But anyway, what my granddad first said at the panel caught them off guard. In addition to everything else he stated, he pointed to Simmons, who was the director of judicial services, with his right finger and said, do you have manic depressive illness? No, she quickly said. He then pointed to Dr. Swain and said, do you have manic depressive illness? No, he responded. He then pointed in the direction of Dr. Johansson. Do you have manic depressive illness then? Of course, like she said no. Granddad finished his opening questions with Becky, who was she was the student government rep on the board at that time. Do you have manic depression? And she said no, she concluded. While slamming his fist on the conference table, he further remarked, you have no God-given damn right to sit here and judge my grandson with your lack of credentials for psychological diagnosis. You're not bipolar, and you just told me that you know nothing about the subject. I thought Becky was about to cry based on her expression. And then he goes on to explain the history. He says, the family clans of both the Cartees and the Halls have long-standing tradition with Lewisburg University. James's sister Alice and his brother-in-law Brian graduated from here, and their kids will probably go here just the same if you do not screw up your decision today. I've given thousands of dollars to this university scholarship programs and athletic squads, especially the football team, which still lacks a competitive top-rated team program. My son, Ray Cartee, attended this school as well as my hard-earned salary with Shell Oil Company, where I worked for over 30 years. I graduated from Lewisburg in 1959 with 2 screaming babies in diapers and a wife who worked at the local textile plant. We lived here at the basketball coliseum that now stands. James attended Lewisburg sporting events since he walked, wearing Trigger mascot diapers. His cousins, uncles, aunts, great relatives, and immediate family proudly wear your name several days of the week. It would be a shame to see his tradition in my family and for future family members end here because of poor judgment. Some wound-up girl whose name I cannot remember and an illness James cannot control. I urge you to pardon James and his alleged charges. Mania is controllable, but his permanent transcript is to leave Lewisburg and cripple his future for many years to come. I smiled with my grandfather's kind speech. Granddad concluded, angry with tears flowing from his eyes. James suffered enough for the ignorance of this institution. I'm ashamed to call this place home. Should have already thrown my grandson out of school. I pray that God opens your eyes today, but if you bring forth a detrimental judgment on my grandson's head, that God deals with each of you accordingly to your ignorant ways. My grandson seeks to live in peace. He will not return to Lewisburg University after you turn your back on both him and my family. Allow him to go with a clean record, leave with a clear conscience today. I won't read any more of that, but I have the support of my family. And I talk about some points that will help you if you deal with this. If you don't have support, you have to find it. If you don't have family that's supportive because they're ignorant, then you've got to find friends that do. And psychotherapy services at a university is a great place to start, or the Disability Resource Center. Depression is doable, but you must not dwell in the shadow of the cloud. And I say never, and I mean never beat yourself up for clinical depression. That's one of the quotes from my book. You must drive yourself to never give up. And that means not committing suicide. Suicide is an easy out. It's an easy option. It ends the misery. It ends everything. And let's be honest, sometimes we'd rather do that than live another day in depression. But you've got to never give up. And if you develop the will to never give up, then you're going to achieve more than you've ever imagined in your life. And I'm a living, breathing example of that. You must come to realize if you have a mental illness or a disability, balance is not the norm. If you think you're going to be chemically balanced for the rest of your life, you might be the miracle that happens. But more than likely not, you may be depressed or a little bit hypomanic, more so than you're going to feel normal. And when you feel normal, count those days as blessed. However, with that being said, you have to continue reaching higher and higher for your dreams. And I write that you are not defined by your circumstances, you are defined by how you react to them. And I firmly believe that. I'm not going to get into, again, I've clipped you here longer than I expected, but I actually got written permission to include Brian and Dr. Rigler in my book. And I wanted to read a little bit about that and then kind of ending on the conclusion of the book, and then I'll be done. But it illustrates the difference between UTC and the other universities that are there, and they lack and they just don't care, frankly. Or they don't give the impression that they care. And we certainly have professors that, whether you have a disability or not, all they care about is the research, and they certainly don't care about the students because they're bringing in grant dollars, and then why not? I have a disability, and they're thinking you're more of a hindrance than you are somebody I want to help. Tenure may, for better or worse, not be the best thing education's ever created. Anyway, so going towards the end of my book, again, I just want to highlight UTC's success because of what they've done. Based on intellectual examples of people who knew and understood disabilities, allow me to illustrate their Christ-like attitudes towards students. The Office of Students and Disabilities, with what it used to be called at UTC, at Lewisburg University, never interviewed on my behalf, even as a registered student. After the fallout at Lewisburg, I quickly transferred to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, where students with disabilities of any kind are welcomed, encouraged, and supported in ways I never encountered before based on the nightmare I lived at Lewisburg. Once documentation was turned in by Dr. Alan Eccles, my psychiatrist, I experienced true accommodations and service to improve my learning experience. And even when faculty ignorantly caused challenges for any student, including myself, on very rare occasions, there wasn't many professors that really did that. It was only the UTC Director of Office of Students with Disabilities, OSD in short, Dr. Michelle Regular, intervened and all settled in its rightful place again. She and her staff fight for students, whatever it takes to make things right. My mind became a train wreck after my nightmare at Lewisburg. While the manic incident occurred 9 months before I attended UCC, I still myself remain unnerved from the mental wars and memories that I relived with each night's nightmares, often waking up in sweat, if still stuck there in time. While Leslie Harms, Assistant Director of the OSD, and Michelle Rigler never knew my psychological struggle up front during the first semester of our interaction with each other, they never asked unless I volunteered my testimony. One day I set an appointment to discuss my story of a year ago at Lewisburg with both Leslie and Michelle. I truly want my friends, advocates, and mentors to understand the manic heart attack I survived. When I entered the office where we met, they knew the subject matter emotionally affected me in a powerful way. Whatever I had to say, they knew it was important. I cried tears, they cried tears as they felt and shared my pain. We all cried together as they hurt for me. After much consideration and prayer, I shared my entire testimony with them. Their reaction baffled me. They kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, "Is that it?" Their views and respect for me never changed, despite the misdemeanor posted on my criminal record. They knew me as a student, believer in Christ, and good person. They accepted me already educated in their careers in professional fields on bipolar disorder and mania. They encountered mental illness and disability every day, so stories like mine became the norm in their service. Their example set by staff members at UTC demonstrates how churches and academic institutions should treat individuals with disabilities, accepting and loving only as Christ would have it. I struggled with whether God called me to UTC and even come close to transferring to the University of North Alabama. This even shows you more. And I received a call from Dr. Richard Brown, the Vice Chancellor at Chattanooga. Dr. Brown had obtained my information that I might transfer from UTC because of frustration as I encountered as a student, not with the OSD office. We discussed some of my concerns and my honest intentions to leave, and Dr. Brown pleaded with me to reconsider. He said UTC likes to hold on to their best students. We would hate to see you go. He's the vice chancellor of the school now. The second in command called me on my cell phone right before Christmas Eve, and he began reading one of these. You're so lucky to go here. Like, you don't even know, how personal this campus is. You know, the lazy river and the rec center, you could quit from where you want, And a Starbucks where you can just drink coffee like me and stay up all night. But anyway, A second in command asked me not to leave the school. I wrestled more with my own demons and still prevailed in the adversity faced at Louisville University. I was not so much Chattanooga University there, it was more of my inner psychological struggle. When UTC was me. I decided to stay at UTC. Dr. Brown changed my life with that one conversation, staying the course, because it became one of the best decisions of my life to remain a student at UTC. Amidst the big league university sports, those are not always the best there, and the large campus atmosphere, but this university accepted me as I am, and for the person I was then and will be. Dr. Michelle Riegler invited me on a few occasions to visit my own campus as a guest speaker during Disability Awareness Month in October, including now. And so I'll just, I want to give UTC props for the role they've played in my life at least. And I just want to say this. I lost a job recently because of clinical depression. I don't mind telling you that because, anyway, it's probably going to be public record eventually anyway. And I beat myself up. I hold myself to standards that most people can never accomplish or never do. The interesting thing about the mania is that I said, literally, I wrote a list that said I wanted to publish a book about this, 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 and this. And there was like 6 books listed. And I thought that I could do it in 6 months or 6 weeks, but 6 years later, guess what? There's projects and agents and deadlines and things for all these books to come to fruition, which is unbelievable because the mania has literally inspired me. One time I told my mom, I was like, I want to take tango lessons in Buenos Aires, Argentina. She goes, where do you come up with this stuff? Do you watch Dance with the Stars too much with us and drink, sangrias with all the interesting populations out there? I said, no. Well, I did that. I backpacked through South America. I took a lesson in tango in Argentina, and I drank wine with the beautiful Argentinian woman that doesn't live up to Lisa, but I experienced that because of the mania, which just pushes me to live to higher heights. And I am my own worst enemy. I have been accepted, thank you to Dr. Brown, with a recommendation from him to Tribeca Nazarene University to start my doctorate in January. And because of what happened, I think, well, I can't do, my thoughts are, I can't do that. I can't do a doctorate full-time and work full-time because it didn't work out this fall. And it's like, well, why not? I survived depression and wanting to kill myself, and I got a 4.0 at Auburn, and somebody told me I couldn't do that. I've traveled around the world. I've written books that I never even thought would come into publication. The agent that I have, I don't know why he picked me up. Because honestly, I haven't made him a dime. But for some reason, he decided to mentor me and make sure I didn't get screwed over. Because there was a lot of publishers that would have disclaimers and they just wanted to, throw it up in the air. You are your own worst enemy. I don't care if you have a mental illness. I don't care whether you have a disability or not. But there is no reason why I can't go to Tribeca and finish with another 4.0 and work full-time. There just isn't. If I have clinical depression, there's no reason why I can't still study. Because when I was at Clemson University, I had a psychologist sit there the first session. And he said, you need to medically withdraw right now. And I don't know, stubborn as I am. And my friends that are here right now can say, he is the most stubborn, bullheaded person I've ever met in my life. He's related to his grandfather. I finished that semester. I could not brush my teeth. I could not get out of bed. I finished that semester with a 4.0 at Louisville University. And it's like I forget time and time again what I've done versus what I can do now. And the truth is I want that doctorate. And nobody should say that you can't, What I'm saying is that if you believe in yourself and you take that Tim Tebow philosophy to heart, you, like me or anybody else, can do what they can do. Your disability does not inhibit you. It gives you an inner strength that other people will never understand. And to be honest, you're probably better for it. And so I want to encourage you that this book doesn't make me special. It doesn't make me, I had another friend that, I once told the guy, I said, I cannot write a book when I was thinking about this project when I graduated from law. I can't be Donald Miller. Donald Miller wrote Blue Lake Jazz and Painted Deserts and Father Fiction and a lot of other books. He's a New York Times bestseller. And he said, you know what, Donald Miller's a man, and you're a man, and there's no difference between you. He said, you just happen to have a disability and a better story, so go for it. And I have never forgotten those words, because this comes from a Christian rapper who's now got a PhD in sociology and teaches at Lewisburg, ironically. But anyway, just know, don't be your own worst enemy, be your best advocate. Don't listen to what other people think, and do what you do best, and follow it with all your heart. That's all I would have to say. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for James?
Feel free, I'm an open book at this point. Literally.
Okay. Was that first episode of mania that you described, was that your presenting symptoms, or had you had other things before that?
I have not had a previous experience, and what's really ironic about my story is that throughout all of the manic and depressive episodes, I was under the care of a doctor and I listened to what he had to say. So there were times where I was taking off medication. Now I'll take it for the rest of my life. But I was not diagnosed until I was manic, depressive, manic again, because then it was obvious like this. And to be honest with you, most people don't go through the whole Looney Tunes bipolar symptoms of what the media says, where it's like up and down every day. For me, it's been episodes where it's lasted several months at a time. So before then, I had displayed exhibitions of creativity. However, I was never diagnosed with any type of mental illness. My father worked for Pfizer Pharmaceuticals for over 30 years, and so he knew what was up when it came to me. And my arm was shattered into 17 pieces with 17 screws and 2 nail plates, and I write about that in the book. But my psychiatrist believes that breaking this arm and that trauma is what triggered the mania first.
You give a lot of good examples and stories, but do you, and of your manic depression, but do you chronicle anything about steps to get out of it and how you've made progress in your life?
I don't necessarily write it down as like a 7-step plan.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, a checklist, but any ideas that...
Yeah, I mean, I talk about not beating yourself up. I talk about facing reality of seeking help if you need it. A lot of this, when I published, I had a couple of publishers that wanted me to write a self-help book. I'm working on a book on rejection right now that focuses towards people with disabilities as a target group. I wanted my memoir to be a memoir and a story, so that you could take from it what I had been through to say, hey, this is what he did at that time, and this worked versus it didn't. Now, let's say I go to speak at a church, or I go to lead a mental workshop, which certainly has been the case and has not. I might give more pointers, as you say. But the book is more a narrative than it is a step-by-step guide of what not to do and what to do. And to further answer your question, let me just find an example. Okay. There are bullet points throughout the book that are, okay, so the people you surround yourself with will come to define who you are. And I write things like that throughout the narrative that have helped me. And those tend to be highlighted like a little quote right there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Do you think that your experience with the mental hospital would have been better if you had voluntarily, or were you voluntarily?
I was forced to go.
I've had a very different experience, and I've heard that people who are forced almost never have a good one. So I'm not 100% sure what my question is, but that's just things that I've heard.
I would like to say something about that. I I think if James has said that if he were sick and his medication was not working, that he would seek hospitalization. But where he was in college and the things that happened to him when he had the problem with the harassment with the girl and had the misdemeanor charge, and then he was sent, in order to get him cleared at the university, he agreed to go to the hospital. He was very sick at the time. But since he's recovered and at this point in his life, if he were to become ill and his medication did not help, he would volunteer to go. And I think that is a different experience.
Well, it's interesting my mom brings that up because I got treated recently as, I won't go into therapy, but I got treated as an inpatient patient at a facility in Nashville for the depression. And quite frankly, I was very disappointed in their treatment and their exposure to other patients and what they were going through. There was no privacy whatsoever. And there is a hospital near where my family and Lisa and I live called Rolling Hills Hospital that is a much, much higher caliber hospital, but there's also a price with it. There's a reason why it's in Franklin in the Brentwood area.
My neighborhood is actually right next to Rolling Hills.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so to answer my mom's question as an addendum, I would much rather stay at home than I would ever go back to a hospital. That is a last resort for me.
If you have the support of people at home that understand what to do. You know, his daddy and I have come so far down the road that we would know that he needed to take his medicine or what to do to help him. Under those circumstances, I think that would be very healing.
Yeah, in other words, I have the luxury and sometimes the blessing that I take for granted to go home. Not a lot of people have that, especially that my parents live 5 miles down the road from me. And I'll bug them a lot still, by the way. But anyway, we don't have a washer and dryer yet, so it's still bugging them. But the only reason I would check myself into a hospital is if I thought I was going to commit suicide to prevent from committing suicide. And then, I won't name the institution I think that lacks, I would make sure that everything lined up financially. I would be okay admitting myself into Rolling Hills. It's better to get help and treatment and maybe have a brief vacation, honestly, than to pull that string. And I do have the strength to do that because I've already demonstrated that in the past.
So I appreciate the comments that you made about the OSD/DRC. Have you done any research with Tribeca to find out the services that they provide?
I am hoping that based on the other doctoral students that I've talked to, that they have a better experience than I experienced in my second master's degree. However, I'm hoping, Lisa and I have thought about it and meditated and prayed about it. Lisa's thinking about doing her MBA at Tribeca in the fall as well. But for our next experience, we wanted a Christian-based university. And I'm hoping that that lives up to their disability resources department too. I will say this too, don't be afraid to fight for yourself. And that includes legally. There are free and injury lawyers love us. I mean, if you have an ADA qualified disability and somebody wrongs you, an injury lawyer will take you on a contingency agreement and it don't cost you no money. Just to fight your cause, especially if they think you're going to win.
That would be extreme, James.
That would be extreme, but when I talked about bringing home King David, that's what I wish my father had done against the university, is bring a civil suit. Because we had plenty of documentation to back that up. And you'll learn something about my personality is that when I'm feeling good and better, I'm not the type to sit in the corner and do nothing. If you wrong me, whether it's at a restaurant with bad service, or it's a cable guy, or it is my disability, I'm a pit bull on a leash, and if you let go, look out. And Lisa will testify to that. Because I've dealt with enough crap in my life that I don't want to go through it anymore, and I don't have to. And I know my rights as a person that's and Brian has been a wealth of knowledge when it comes to ADA and my rights as a student or an employee or whatever. And I'm okay doing what I need to do to protect myself and my family. So,
If you guys are interested, he does have copies of his book for sale tonight. If you go stick around a little bit longer for that, if you're interested.
are there any more questions? Anyway, thanks for having me.
And those of you that came for class, make sure you tell your classmates what a wonderful event that they missed, and rub it in their nose a little bit.
Yeah, and thank you to all of you who came, because I actually have more strangers than people that know me, which is like nice for a book session at this point. And the books are $15, and for a shoestring budget and the newlyweds, like it does help us with gas money and stuff, as silly as that sounds. So if you're interested in the story, and if you are a believer, so to speak, then I think you'll enjoy it, and Christmas is coming up, so there you go.
Thanks everybody again for showing up tonight. I really appreciate it.